Okay. All right. This thing is recording. All right. Dennis Caye here with Belize Islands Real Estate. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's video. And I'd like to introduce to you a very good friend of mine, Alberto Villanueva, the owner of Belize Caye Investments. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because many of you are purchasing condos, land, private islands, homes, things like that. And you're asking how you should handle the closing. So should you use a Belize lawyer? Should you use a closing company? Well, Alberto here handles probably 95% of all of my closings and my company's closings, but also for many other brokers and agents on Ambergris Caye. And so I thought I'd have him on today so he can answer some of the most commonly asked questions about closing and just kind of walk you through the process of how it works. So welcome to Alberto. Appreciate you being on the video today.
Hi, Dennis. Welcome. Greetings from San Pedro. I hope you're doing well in France.
Yes, doing very well. Excellent, excellent. So this interview is just going to be very informal. We have no agenda. We have no set a list of questions to cover. But I guess let's just start with Alberto. Some people say if I can recommend a lawyer or a closing company. Can you just briefly explain what the difference is between your company and, for instance, someone going to Belize City and getting a lawyer and what's preferable for them?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, then is Belize Caye Investments, which I'm going to refer to as BCIL, has been in the real estate closing business for 16 years. We started this operation in 2004, and it started basically just with yours truly. I now have a staff of 6. Given the recent COVID-19 issues, some of them do work from home. They're scattered over here in San Pedro and Caye, which most of your clients are probably very familiar. When it comes to the actual real estate purchase here in San Pedro or wherever in Belize, it's pretty much like in the US or Canada. You get fee simple title. I must be clear that when it comes to our office, all we do are real estate closings, and we set up Belize 250 companies, and we can advise clients as well when it comes to their purchases if they're using IRA. We're very familiar with that. We are not a law firm. We are not attorneys. I need to be very specific about that. Under our laws, you do not need to be an attorney or licensed with the bar to do real estate closings because they're very simple and straightforward. We use the same services that the attorneys use. We do the title investigation. My job or my staff's job over the last 16 years is to basically protect all our clients that at the end of the day, they receive fee simple title and that they have possession of their property free and uncleared. Free and clear. So what happens is that we have to do all the title checks. We have to do all the company checks. If it's a company, we do the Supreme Court check as well. We check the land titles unit. We make sure at the end of the day, when the client walks away, they are getting what they were presuming to buy. And like you said, you use us for 95% of your closings. We work with a lot of the names that clients may be familiar with: Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, Remax. Those are all here in San Pedro and Caye, and of course Belize. We also have a lot of the independent realtors that use us. You talk to any realtor here in San Pedro and there's a high likelihood that they use our office. I want to say I think we do maybe about 60 to 70% of the closings in San Pedro and Caye.
Excellent. Very good. So one of the good things too about using Alberto and his team for your closing is that you put a volume of closings through the lands department, through central bank. And so you're used to dealing with these same individuals day in and day out.
That's correct.
If something comes up, if a question comes up on a certain transaction, you can get answers quickly. So that's helpful as well. So just sort of walk me through, like, I have a client who gets a property under contract, and now we email you. What's the process? How do you start the relationship between yourself and my buyers?
Okay. For us, unlike the attorneys, our relationship is not just the actual closing. We go way beyond that. I mean, ideally, it starts at the closing aspect of it, and I'll explain what I mean. It goes beyond the closing aspect. Um, when it comes to the actual closing, you send me a contract. For example, like this morning, you sent us a contract. You said, "Can you please reach out to the buyer?" We do reach out to the buyer. Under our compliance laws, we are required to obtain due diligence information, which is basic stuff. We need a flatbed scan of your passport picture page. We need a secondary ID. There's a form you have to fill out to tell us how you want to take title, what your contact information is, just basic stuff. Those items are kept under the strictest of confidence. And we use those to draft the transfer of land. So we reach out to you, we request that document, you send it to us via scan or email. We also asked you as well for the earnest money deposit. When the earnest money deposit hits, which is very important because we do have a fiduciary obligation to inform the seller or his agent that the funds are in, we will now say we will begin the due diligence process. During the process, after gathering the due diligence, after receiving the earnest money deposit, we conduct the title investigation. The title investigation takes about 5 to 7 business days, sometimes a little bit longer. What that shows is if there's any liens, encumbrances, any judgments, anything that would affect that property specifically or affect the individual that owns that property. I want to say in my 16-year history, maybe only 0.01% of properties are encumbered or there's a lien or a judgment against it. The other 99.99% are typically always free and clear. And even in that 0.01%, there are stuff that can be done that will have that property be deemed free and clear. So sometimes it's, just as an example, an HOA fee, or the lot was sold previously and there's a lien on it from a previous buyer. That buyer now turns around and flips it. All that can be easily resolved. It's a rare when we tell a client this cannot close.
Okay. And in that instance, for instance, we put something under contract. For some reason it can't close. Well, then the earnest money is refunded.
The earnest money is refunded. There are some menial fees for that may be due to our office. Typically, it's just the cost of the title investigation, and maybe the cost of actually opening a file. So it's just a few $100s, but the clients always get their earnest money deposit back. We do tell them, however, that, hey, there's a bill here. How would you like it settled? Do you want it backed out of your earnest money? We need your permission for that, or do you want to send it separately? In our 16-year history, at no point when a deal has gone south has the buyer not received his money. They always get their money back.
Excellent, very good. And I think it's important too for people to know that most of the agents on the island, before we list a property, we will also have extremely high assurance that the title is clean, that it's good to transfer. Correct. And as an example, like I came to you with some purchases last week, and I knew they had a bank loan on them. There was a caution on the bank, so we knew that up front. So that wasn't we didn't find that out after the fact. We knew it up front, so that way when we go to closing,
we would have found out and told you, hey Dennis, there's a mortgage on it. The mortgage needs to be cleared. In regards to something like that, which we've gotten, the seller has to give us what we call a letter of undertaking or commitment, where the bank is saying to us, if you give us X number of dollars, we will release the properties. It's very typical here. One thing with the earnest money, before I forget, when it's sent, it's not sent to Belize. A lot of people think it's an international wire. At the very bottom of our email, if you look, it says Belize Caye Investments Limited, but it also says Belize Title and Closings. Belize Title and Closings is our US LLC based in New Mexico, and that's where all the funds go. It's a legitimate account. It goes to New Cinda. And one of the things is as well that I which I'm very proud of, we as well do pay our taxes to the IRS for that LLC.
Okay,
So,
excellent. So that I'm glad
yeah,
you brought that up, because the question some of my clients have, especially my US clients, is when I'm sending the Earnest money, why isn't it going to Belize? I thought it would go to Belize,
no,
but you have a licensed set up escrow account in the United States where all funds are held.
that's correct. With you said license, what in this case, because we don't do the real estate transactions are not in the US, they're here in Belize. There's no license, but we do have a US LLC, we do have
Right.
an EIN, we do pay our taxes to the IRS. One thing with the with our laws, because and you're a little bit familiar with this, because if we're dealing with one non-Belize resident and another non-Belize resident, the funds don't have to come to Belize, and hence the reason a lot of people that do real estate closings, including the attorneys, have US accounts like ours as well. So those funds, in 90% of the cases, those funds don't have to come to Belize, and our laws dictate that. If there's a resident involved, just say I'm selling something, then the funds have to come into the country. But that's a totally different ballgame.
Okay, so let me just recap real briefly to put it in a simple package. So I get a closing, the buyer and seller agree to go under contract. I
Correct.
send that to you.
Correct.
You email the buyers and the sellers and you request due diligence.
Correct.
Okay? You get the Earnest money in, and then
Correct.
you start the process of the transfer of
We do
land
the title
forms.
investigation. I
Good,
may
title
have
investigation.
with everything else because of
Good.
the earnest money. We do the title investigation. The title investigation comes back in about 5 to 7 business days. Like I said, typically it always is free and clear. There's that small fraction of a percent that's not free and clear. If it's free and clear, the first thing we do is we send a scan to the buyer and their agent, say everything looks good. We're now going to start working on the transfer instrument. If it's a term deal, we do what we call the agreement for sale. It says what the purchase price is. It says what the terms of the contract are. If it's a straight sale, it's a different set of paperwork as well. It's called a transfer of land form. In both instances, unlike US deeds, the execution and signature is fairly simple. We only require on each document maybe like 3 or 4 signatures per contract. Typically, a client can sign anywhere between 4 to maybe 8 times on an entire triplicate of documents. Very simple. It is a binding agreement. That document we'll send to you. We'll ask you, hey, do you want us to send it to you via FedEx, or do you want to print it? And then we can send the execution instructions. So we'll send them how to execute it and sign it. And then protocol pretty much dictates that it goes to our buyers first, and then we ask the buyers to go ahead and send it to the sellers. The sellers have 2 choices. They can send it to their real estate agent, or they can send it to our office. Typically, because most of the realtors know us on San Pedro, they're going to say, just send it to Alberto's office. So that comes in. You will know that there's my accounts team, Family, is going to reach out to you basically and say, hey, Dennis, are there any prorations? Typically on transactions, it's just real estate taxes or property taxes. We will prorate that as well. And then we try to aim for 5 to 7 business days before closing that we have what we call a final closing or settlement statement that goes to our buyers to tell them that that's the amount of funds that is due to close. And again, those funds go to our account that Belize Title and Closings.
Okay, good.
When we get the funds and the paperwork, it goes to our compliance. We have a compliance team that is required by law. They check out the paperwork. They make sure everything is in order, that the signatures match, that the notarization is done correctly, that the signatures on the buyers and sellers' passport match the signatures on the documents, because if they don't match, as an example, the government will kick those documents back. We don't like going back to our buyers and sellers saying, hey, you have to re-execute this. if everything falls in line with the compliance, the funds are in, everything is duly executed, we typically declare the transaction close on the proposed closing date. Sometimes we go over 3 to 5 business days, but in our history as a company, I think we've always closed within like 5 days past closing, provided that everything is free and clear.
Right. So that's a question I had come up yesterday. One person said, is this closing date? Because I had a date of, say, September 17th. Does it necessarily close exactly on that date? And I said, well, in Belize, we don't sit across from each other. Like in the States, they're used to having a time and a date. You come and you sit and you sign. And but in Belize,
everything, even more so now than before, everything is done via FedEx, or we can send it electronically. They have to print and sign. Under our laws, and this hasn't changed yet, everything has to have wet ink on it. So at the end of the day, when I have a file, just say parcel 123, parcel 123 has to have transfer of land forms or an agreement for sale in wet ink, meaning that I can actually take it to the registrar's office and say, here are 3 original copies, 2 are for you, 1 is mine. Will you please accept these and process them accordingly?
Okay, excellent. Very good. And so the entire process, typically you ask for 60 days to get everything done.
We ask for 60 days, and the main reason for that is, especially right now, the volume, we're actually very surprised. It seems like everybody wants to come to Belize, and it's that 60 days gives us enough time to do the title investigation, the due diligence, draft the agreement, and send those out to buyers, then sellers to sign. It basically gives us that entire, what we call the closing loop from start to finish.
Excellent. Very good. Excellent. So there's different ways that people take title. And I don't want to make this too long of an interview, but you have their personal names, Belize Chapter 250, and let's say some sort of other entity like Belize IBC or LLC. Can you just briefly explain when a person might choose one over another? And just in general terms, so I can go into more detail later, but just in general.
Okay. So the big question is, one of the big things, well, one of the items my office is big about is, and I've asked you this question before, is what is your buyer's intention? You as a buyer, what are your intentions on buying this property? Are you thinking of flipping it 3 to 5 years from now? Are you thinking of holding it on for retirement? Maybe 5 to 10 years from now? Are you going to gift it? What are your intentions with the property? And that really determines how we recommend them taking title. Just let me give you an example. I always tell retirees that are not using their IRAs, because that's a different ballgame, that if they're buying property and they intend on living in Belize, and there's a few people like that, like Nova Perel, you remember her, she's living here now.
Right.
They took title in at Belize 250 for several reasons. One, it lowers their stamp taxes from 8 to 5%. The second thing is that it allows them to have a corporate bank account here in Belize for ease of banking. There's a big liability leverage because in Belize, a Belize 250 is equivalent to a US LLC as well, or an LLC in Canada. And, you know, by virtue of you being on the Belize LLC, you're being the beneficial holder, you qualify for a work permit and eventual residency. So like right now, Miss Nova and her husband are actually residents of Belize.
Right.
So that's just an example. What are your intentions with the property? If you think about flipping it, one example I'd say is that maybe you want to create a Belize IBC. One of the things we tell clients as well, you really need to look at with an IBC, the yearly cost that you'll be paying for them. It can get expensive, and there is a recommended threshold for our clients as well if they want a Belize IBC. So it really depends on what that client wants. And things change throughout the the years, you know, all our plans change. 2020, for example. And
Also, Alberto, it's true, isn't it true? You look at also who the seller is.
we also have to
For
look at
example, I've
as well.
sold several properties this week where the seller has been a local Belizean.
Correct.
And so my clients have opted to take title in a Belize Chapter 250 because it makes it a very easy transfer. And
Correct.
central bank approval isn't required on such a
Correct.
transfer like that.
Correct. That is correct. If a non-resident of Belize is buying from a resident, we have to go to central bank. But if the seller, like in this case, with those properties you put on the contract, if they are, if she's a resident of Belize and we open at 250, the 250 is considered a resident entity. So we don't have to go to the central bank as well.
Right. Whereas if let's say the other properties that were purchased, they were owned by a couple in the U.S. Well, if another couple in the U.S. is buying, they could take title in their personal names or a
Correct.
Belize IBC, and
That
then
is
it's
correct.
a foreigner to foreigner transaction.
That's correct. And we avoid the central bank. Central bank here is the regulatory body when it comes to foreign exchange. And they like, this is Belize, and they like all that hard currency as much as they can get. But there are ways, legitimate ways that we work with the central bank, and those rules are according to them. They dictate the rules. If it's a Belize resident to a Belize resident, we don't have to go to them. If it's a non-resident of Belize to a non-resident of Belize, which 90% of the deals are, we don't have to go to the central bank as well.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. And one more thing, before I forget, Dennis, I said we just don't do the closing. We develop relationships with the client. What we do, we have had clients that need bank accounts when the entire closing process is over. Just say they have a 250 company, which is equivalent to the US LLC. We will tell them what they need to bring with them to go to the bank here. The bank by that point will already have the paperwork from our office. It's pretty much for them to just go in and sign off on the signature cards, answer a few basic questions. Here you have to be in person to open a bank account. You know, there are things like with our care, if you have a piece of property and you have a caretaker or you have somebody clearing the land, we are happy to help out with that. And we don't nickel and dime for everything. We just feel like it's a part of the service that we offer as well. And I guess that's one of the reasons why, more so within the last 5 to 7 years, our office has been a fairly busy office, you know, because of the customer relationships we have.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, is there anything that my buyers or sellers should know to make things, I mean, is there anything they should prepare for the closing? Anything you want them to know, or any tips and tricks on how to have a successful close?
For us, when it comes to your buyers, one of the things that we require first and foremost before we can do anything under law is the due diligence. If we can get the due diligence within the first 2 to 3 business days, that helps a whole lot, because that has to go through a vetting process where it's approved by our compliance department. And again, it's a rarity where we've never had a client, we've never told a client we can't work for them, because we do have to pass a compliance test with them. It's required under law. That's the first thing we need, the due diligence. And the second thing we need is, of course, the earnest money. That shows our office that this buyer is serious about purchasing this property in Belize. Those are the 2 more important things. And of course, some patients, I do know there are clients that are buying, this may be their first time buying property in a foreign country, but we're here to do that job and to make them as comfortable as possible. I do think you are aware that over the next day or 2, I'm reaching out to several of your clients via Zoom or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, just so we can speak to them and have them feel comfortable. We do that with all our clients if they feel the need to do so.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for your time today, Alberto. I think this is very helpful because, like I said, a lot of my clients have these questions, and we can answer them one-off in an email, but text is very impersonal. It's nice then that they can put a face to the company. So when I talk about you, which I do, because people, even before they get to the point of buying, they'll say, how does closing work? And I'll say, well, you're going to talk to Alberto and his team at Belize Caye Investments. So they're already used to hearing you. So now they'll put a face with the name.
If they Google my name and add Belize, one of the first things that will pop up is that we are an associate member of the Association of Real Estate Brokers here in Belize. That's the first thing that typically shows in a Google search. And if they do some checks on me, they'll notice that I have quite a bit of experience even in politics in Belize. So
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Alberto. I think this is it. If my clients have additional questions, I'll be happy to break it down the more in detail about the cost for IBCs and Chapter 250s and all that kind of good stuff. But at least this gives them a place to start.
ultimately, Dennis, our goal is to make sure what they buy is free and clear, and at close, they can say the property is there. And I think we've been very successful at that, given the fact that, you know, we have a 16-year history.
Absolutely. Again, well, thank you very much. All the best to you guys.
Dennis. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
I will now finish my coffee and get to work.
All right.
Give
All
my
right.
regards to Steph, okay?
I will. And your family as well.
I will. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.